Tell me, how big is your MSP's marketing megaphone? And is there any way that you can make it bigger? When trying to talk to potential managed service clients, you may have heard that finding a niche or a vertical is way more effective. But why? And how exactly does it work? I have an expert joining me right now to explain why you might be better off with a teeny weeny bullhorn rather than a big, noisy whopper.
Hi, my name is Adam Walter. I am from Humanize IT. We are a SaaS company for MSPs where we help digest all that information from your PSA, put it through our engine, and output projects that are meaningful to your clients so you can focus on the conversation and the relationship with your client rather than putting together these 6-hour PowerPoints and all these quotes. We take care of the proposals for you. We take care of the marketing for you. We take care of the project roadmaps for you. All you have to do is talk to your client, and you've got an excellent QBR or an account management session.
Adam Walter back on the podcast after a couple of years and straight in with the 30-second elevator pitch. I mean, literally no other guest gets away with that. Everyone else gets a 3-second intro, but somehow you get an elevator pitch. Dude, thank you so much for dude. I think I just said dude for the first ever time on the podcast there as well. Welcome back to the show. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been too long. It's awesome to have you back. And we will talk a little bit more about Humanize IT maybe towards the end of this interview. I think you've had your free plug already. But we want to talk about niching, and we want to talk about the power of super laser focus on a very specific set of people. And I know you've got lots of experience of that. But before we get into that, let's just set some context. Let's set some credibility. So assume that whoever's listening to you right now or watching this on YouTube doesn't know who you are. Shock, horror. How can that be? Maybe there is someone out there. So just tell us, who are you, Adam Walter?
Yeah, I have been in the industry for a long time. I got my bachelor in science and computer science in 2002. I had a minor in art, and then I've got a partial MBA because I didn't want to finish out learning supply chain management. So I'm all over the board. I'm very widely experienced. I was a Nexus core admin. I was a CISSP. I was a critical infrastructure security director. I've run large teams, small teams. I have a lot of experience. If a lot of people know me from conferences, if you talk about something, I have a story. There's a story there. And so I formed a company called Humanize IT in 2017. Well, technically I formed Virtual C to be a CIO for hire for small businesses and to take my expertise and help small businesses get that same advantage that large companies got. I didn't know VCIO was a thing. I just wanted to be a fractional CIO. Did really well there. Formulated Humanize IT in 2022, actually, and started helping MSPs have those better conversations with their clients so they could help drive revenue for their clients and themselves at the same time.
Yeah, no, I love that. And we will talk more about Humanize IT just towards the end of the interview. I'm actually kind of interested in what you've done over the last couple of years, because you have shifted and changed. And,
Yep.
you know, I read your emails that come out every week and sometimes twice a week. And it's all good stuff. And I'm just interested and curious what you're doing and why and what's driven you to change. But we'll come on to that in a second. Let's talk about niching first of all. So when we talk about niching, what exactly do you mean by that? What's an easy definition that everyone can understand?
Yeah, niching is specifically focusing on an industry for delivery, right? So if you if you look at your local town, your marketplace, you see some of your clients as an MSP are manufacturing, some are construction, some are accounting firms, some are dentists. Not so much in the UK though, right? And you have doctors, you have lawyers, you have people in all different areas. Well, right now, MSPs tend to and service providers across the board, but whether it's a lawn care company or a computer firm, you're spreading yourself across every single industry. Niching is picking one or two of those and saying, I am just going to service attorneys. I am just going to service medical service providers or schools or manufacturing firms. And when you do that, you say, I'm not going to do dentists. I am not going to do lawyers. I'll let somebody else have that. And that's when you define who you care about and who your target audience is. You draw a picture of them. A lot of marketing companies will even have you draw a picture. What is the name of this person? What kind of car do they drive? And what do they care about? But you only care about dentists.
Yeah, or lawyers or whatsoever. I think you
Whatever you
absolutely
pick.
nailed that there. Yeah. So let's take one from outside of tech. So you mentioned lawn care there, and you also said something very important, which is you decide what you don't want. Right. So I have, as you said, I'm based here in the UK. We get the odd summer day once or twice a year. So I do have a lawn in my garden, and I do have a company that comes and they do things to the lawn. I don't know what they do. They aerate and they put things in, and I don't know, they add worms or who knows what they do. Who cares? But the point is the lawn looks nice. And that company is a specialist domestic lawn company, right? That's what they do. They only do domestic lawns. And mine's just a normal average size lawn. And I know that there are also lawn care companies that specialize in, for example, lawn care for hotels or lawn care where there's a large amount of lawn, right? Which is a completely different proposition to, my lawn, certainly now my daughter's 14, like we go on the lawn like once a year. Whereas a lawn belonging to a hotel is going to have people on it all the time, right? It's going to have, there might be specialist lawn care firms for sports teams or whatsoever. And each of those is probably very similar. 80% of the work is very similar, right? But there'll be a 20% that you wouldn't do. Oh no, you wouldn't. What you do on a sports pitch, you wouldn't do on a domestic lawn. And it's that 20% is the specialist thing that I think people are looking for. So when you say, right, I'm going to focus, my MSP is going to look after lawyers, but we can niche within the niche. We want lawyers where there's at least 10 support staff, where there's at least 3 active partners, where they have an office. We don't want a fully remote company, for example. And the more the more you get into that niche and be very, very clear on who it is that you want to reach, I think that becomes more powerful, because then you can make the message and the marketing you're doing talk exactly to that person. So if I pick up a leaflet that says lawn care, which is a general lawn care, versus lawn care just for average sized lawns in average sized villages in with the kind of weather that we have today, which of those two things is more relevant to me? It's the one that talks directly to me about my lawn, about the this, about the that. So from your experience, and obviously you talk to thousands of MSPs, same as I do, from your experience, do you find that most MSPs dip their toe into a niche and they'll say something like, oh, yes, we do lawyers. We've got a page on our website about that. But that's all it is. There's no real niching. Or do you find that some of them actually do go the whole hog and go the whole way?
We see a little bit of both. So we see people who say, well, it's what I've heard is accidental niching. When you're going to do it, because you have people you naturally gravitate towards. And when you started your MSP, you probably started with a friend who needed IT support, and that just grew your company. So for me, in 2017, I started off doing CIO work for private schools in the Lutheran school districts. And the reason was they had no CIO. They had no IT department because they were not a unified school. And they're not like public schools or Catholic schools where there's this big system. They were just trying to figure things out themselves. So me acting as a fractional CIO, and there's 160 of these schools in Nebraska, worked out really well for me and for them. And so I defined that early on, like, this is what I am doing. And I kept doing that. And I started developing skills that were unique to them, such as helping them with E-rate, helping them with their particular politics that they deal with within their synod, within their districts, and how that works. And so I knew how to help them with grants. I knew how their cadence worked throughout the year with their donors. And I helped them develop out stories to get those donor dollars and to compete with the school districts in their area. And so with MSPs, when I see them do this, the really neat thing that I've heard, especially all throughout 2024, was I kept hearing about MSPs who just leaned into the niche they already had. They didn't know they had it. It's like, oh my gosh, we're already dealing with attorneys. Let's just lean into that and really support LexisNexis or their software suite and what they're trying to do. And they started charging like $500 a seat, $600 a seat, US dollars. So they lost like a third of their customers because they couldn't afford them anymore. But that was okay. So they just cut their workload down by a third and increased profits from $150 an endpoint to $500 an endpoint. So they've tripled their revenue and they have less work. And they're very happy with it because now when they walk into this town, they are the premier attorney MSP. They know how to give you an advantage. They know the technologies that are going to come out for attorneys that are going to benefit them. And so the attorneys are willing to pay more for that unique boutique feel.
Yeah, I agree. And that's when you know you've got niching right, isn't it? When you become the premium, the top end choice. And actually, you want the lawyers, well, we all want lawyers to be in pain, but you want the customers to feel the pain of, oh, I really need those guys, want those guys. They're the best ones. They know, they understand our business. They understand this. They're already working with 30 businesses like us, but they're really expensive, but it's worth it. And that's great. I love hearing about businesses that do less work to make more money. That's to me, that's a really smart kind of business. So I guess one of the fears I hear when I talk to MSPs is that their fear is that in committing to a niche, and especially a niche within a niche, like lawyers of 20 people or 10 to 20 staff, or manufacturers that only do this or whatever, one of their fears is, but if I go all in on that and I focus all my marketing on that, I'm not going to attract other kind of clients. What would you say to that kind of fear?
You have to, if you want to grow, you're going to have to take some risks. And that fear of not wanting to lose your clients is something that can hold you back. And sometimes the fear is just, well, they were my first customer. Okay, cool. They're a pet project. They're a loss for you, but you love them and you're going to keep them on. That's fine. But when you sit down and you look at the risks involved, if I increase my cost per seat for attorneys, or let's say dentists or schools, so that they can have a unique experience, it doesn't mean you have to get rid of all of your old ones. You can create a secondary breakdown of cost for them, but it's not recommended. Eventually you have to outgrow your shoes. You eventually have to get forward. If you're happy where you are, stay where you are. But if you want to grow, there's going to be some pain involved. You're going to have to get rid of some unhealthy customers. And you have to identify what unhealthy means. And it might mean that they are not in your vertical. They are not in your target audience. They are, as in, they're not paying enough, or they don't fit into the solution stack you have because you're focused on this area over here. But until you define what you are, you can't define and say no to the things you aren't. And so that's why you keep bringing on unhealthy clients, because you're so desperate for money that you haven't defined what a healthy client looks like.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way of putting it. And we've all been there, haven't we? Where we take, we've all been in business where we just take money because there's money there, there's work there, even though we know we're going to regret it down the line, and this is not going to end well. I've not done this in this business, but my previous business, which I sold in 2016, I absolutely survived for 4 years just taking anything that would come in, and obviously it all went bad at the end. Okay, I think one of the other benefits about niching, Adam, of course, is that you become the biggest fish in a relatively small pond. And when you're just fishing for clients in your geographical area, in your town, your county, your state, whatever it is, you remain a small fish because you're in fact, there's you and there's the 40 other fish, which are the 40 other MSPs. Whereas when you are the most expensive managed service provider providing strategic cybersecurity, growth, advice, consultancy for lawyers of a minimum of 20 staff just within this town, you suddenly become the biggest fish, if not the only fish within the pond, and that means you get all of the business. And when you take that to a whole extreme and you start dominating, you're talking at all the conferences, you're being written about in the magazines, or you're writing your own tech columns in their blogs, or you're part of their communities or whatsoever. That's when you really start to dominate a sector, which is so exciting. Let's finish with one final question on niching, then we'll come on to humanize IT, which is, give me some examples of good sectors to be in and bad sectors to be in, just from your experience.
From what I hear, right? So I'm talking to MSPs all the time with our business. Good industries to be in: education, especially private schools. I can tell you 100% this is an underserved community because their MRR is terrible. But you know what they're really good at? Donors. So it is easier to ask a private school for $150,000 than it is to ask them for $3,000 a month. And that's an example of why niching works, because you understand the finance of this sector. You know that if you lay out, this is how it's going to benefit the kids. This is how they're going to get a competitive advantage in the area of science, technology, any of the STEM stuff, because we're going to build labs for this and they're going to be powered by this kind of technology, or we're going to help the teachers become more effective and teach across campuses in an easy way. Then you're telling a story and you're building a stack, and donors are willing to give the money for that. They love that. And you've got to get to know them. Other areas that are really good in niche, medical. Are you helping people with HMS? Do you have dedicated HMS staff in-house that can come and say, hey, I can help you with Epic. I have 3 certified techs here. No one's going to compete with you. And so now you have somebody who's going to come and help them with their medical office when they can't get somebody on the phone. Somebody's going to teach the staff how to run this and do lunch and learns on better serviceability or how to do this and that. You now become the 800-pound gorilla or the big fish in a small pond because none of the other service providers can do that. I have one MSP who does wineries. They were on our podcast earlier this year, and he just does wineries. He's like, I'm not a real MSP. I'm like, why not? He's like, well, I don't have all these things. I'm like, you don't need all those things. Do your wineries need all those? Well, not really, but I want to be and he's like beating himself up because there's this expectation of what an MSP is, rather than realizing you have a captive audience who loves you because you uniquely have a set of services that they need to offer their clients. Lean into that. And he did. And it's working out really well for him.
I love that. I want to do wineries. That would combine my favorite hobby, which is wine, with my favorite work activity, which is marketing. I might start Paul Green's winery marketing business. Yeah, I need to think that one through. I'm going to throw in a sector that I don't think is a great one for MSPs, and that's manufacturers. And I know there are lots of MSPs that love manufacturers. What I don't like about manufacturers is the bespoke amount of work per client. And again, some MSPs, they pride themselves on that. But the whole beauty of, well, one of the other beauties of niching is that you've dropped in various software packages that various niches use. And it's like you mentioned LexisNexis earlier, which is a legal thing. You learn LexisNexis for one client, you already know it for the second client, the third, the fourth, the fifth. It's no different. It's the same software. Whereas if you've got manufacturer A who's running an ABC machine that's run by one XP computer that hasn't gone down since 2006, and it's like why would you want to have that responsibility? And B, you've got to learn all about that machine. And then the next client has a completely different machine made in a different country where the instruction manual's in German. And it's like, we've got to support all of those. But anyway, that's just my personal thoughts on that one. Let's move on to humanize IT. So you have transformed in the last few years. What was I was going to say what was the problem, what was wrong, but where were you then and where are you now, and what sort of drove that transformation?
Yeah, I originally started off, Virtual C was a CIO, fractional CIO firm, right? I have a lot of management experience. I'm not self-taught. I've been mentored. I have the education and I have the experience as an engineer. I was in the data centers. I was the tier 3 go-to buck stops here admin for billion-dollar companies. And I got into management and I realized that I missed working for small businesses. So I formed my own company and then brought on a couple people, and we started teaching MSPs how to do actual CIO work, because the idea of what a CIO was broken in the MSP world. Everybody was basically what we would call in the corporate world a manager of desktop engineering, is what people were calling CIOs in the MSP world. And so I started saying, we need to start talking about profits. We need to talk about how you're going to design out strategy for your clients from a business standpoint and how a technology is going to affect that. And I did really well there for a long time. I was using a software called Managed Services Platform to do gap analysis. And during the pandemic, I had enough money that I ended up buying Managed Services Platform and turning it into a tool that would help CIOs dissect what was going on within their MSP and align it with what was going on with their clients. So you say, hey, look, I see you're trying to grow your sales by 20% next year. You don't have a SharePoint portal. That will help you manage contracts and get them out to your clients faster. And so you're helping promote projects that will enhance your clients over time And there was no real tool out there that was fitting this. They were calling them QBRs, they were calling them strategy sessions or whatever, but they kept focusing on tickets and assets because that's what the channel wanted them to focus on, reselling licenses and assets. So we came in and designed a product using our gap analysis software that focused on delivering better services to your clients that they actually need to run their companies effectively from a strategic standpoint. So you work with Adam Walter's MSPs, you'll say, our MSPs are going to help your business become more profitable. We're not going to save you money. We'll do that too because it's operations, but we're going to help you find areas where we can enhance your revenue, enhance your profits, and reduce risk. And we happen to use technology to do that. That is the message that needs to be out there. And that's the message we're trying to get to people.
I love it. I love it. So, do you know that counts as your pitch? You've just had your pitch for Humanize IT there. You're allowed 30 more seconds just to speak directly to the MSPs that are listening to this or watching this on YouTube. Just tell us what you can do for them and what's the best way to get in touch with you, Adam.
Sure. Come to humanizeit.biz, get a demo, or just sign up for a free trial. You will be up and running in about an hour, and you'll digest things out of your PSA, or as of last month, Ninja RMM, we will digest directly from them, give you a list of projects that need to be worked on with this client. And all you have to do is walk in and do a QBR or a strategic session, but focus on what the client needs to do. And then align the projects, the 300 projects you have there, and prioritize the ones that they care about and are help move their needle forward. And you will have a sticky client that will be loyal forever. Our website, go check it out, is humanizeit.biz.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Edge.